All right, we just finished up training here at Tipping Point Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We're here with John Gutta, the owner here at Tipping Point. We're going to talk to him a little bit about next Saturday's event, a little bit about your history, and then just kind of the classes and things that you offer here at Tipping Point Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously, we're 8 days out from the Who's Next Pro All-Star Game next Saturday, January 28th in Des Moines. You are the East All-Stars team captain, so talk to me just a little bit about what it means to be the East All-Stars captain, maybe some matchups you're looking forward to, just in general what you're looking forward to next Saturday's event.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super stoked for next week. We kind of, I feel like we had this idea, or you'd had this idea for a while, and I always thought it was a really cool idea, and I feel like we're kind of at a spot where, the teams worked out really well, where we really get to showcase Iowa Jiu-Jitsu and, folks that have competed at Subspectrum quite a bit and really showcase the athletes there in a really fun, unique format. So really excited for next weekend, and I think all of the matches are going to be fire. I have no idea how everything's going to go. I hope it's going to go well for us, but I think it's going to be fireworks no matter what.
And I like what you mentioned there about how it's come together, a lot of Iowa-based athletes. This was something I wanted to do 3 years ago, but I feel like it might have ended up being a gym from Omaha or a gym from Chicago. So the way that the athletes themselves, I think 8 of the 10 total athletes have competed very regularly at Subspectrum over the last 2 years, and it's allowed us to really build things up in a way that I think is going to be exciting for everybody watching next Saturday. Talk to me a little bit about the process or the thought strategy that went into choosing the 5 teammates that you put together for the East All-Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to include athletes that have competed at Subspectrum, obviously, and I wanted to try to include as many Iowa athletes as possible, I kind of just tried to pick the best team that I could. I really want to win. And so, Brian Peterson, he's one of my black belts. He's one of the toughest people in the room. He is good everywhere. He is he's great positional jiu-jitsu. He has great submissions, and he's kind of just a difficult matchup, I think, for just about anybody. Mahmoud is a really good friend. Actually, I met him up in Milwaukee when he was a blue belt 4 years ago, and he's just been in this crazy upward trajectory. He is one of the most exciting, dynamic competitors to watch. He's done awesome at Subspectrum. It's really cool to watch his career blossom, and he is an absolute terror on the mat. I'm really glad he's on my team.
Yeah.
Darren Kreiner, he is like the mountain that moves. He is one of the strongest humans I've ever felt. He was a state champ wrestler in high school, and then just powerlifted for 10 years before he started jiu-jitsu. He is one of the most athletic and strongest people I've ever gone with, and his jiu-jitsu in the last few years has gotten really good. He's really hard to deal with from just about any position. And he's also a Subspectrum vet. He actually won as a white belt. He won the absolute. And then our last member, Vic. I was originally, I'd anticipated, Nate Fenton, the owner of Breaking Point, rounding out our team, but he had some, health issues, and I thought Vic would be a really cool addition to the team, also a Subspectrum veteran, and that kind of that gets Nate there. Nate's going to be there to coach Vic for this, which I think is really cool. Vic is good everywhere. He is when you count him out is when he is at his best. So I think he's going to make everything really interesting and really dynamic as well.
Yeah, and I was super pumped to see the team that you put together. I was happy to see that you brought in people from your own gym. Mahmoud, obviously, having such a great career with Subspectrum over the last 2 years. I remember him as a blue belt, just at the bit, just chirping at me, get me on one of the pro shows, get me on one of the pro shows. And I told him, come to the Open and win one of those things first, and he did that. And then that night we put the match together between him and Nirat from Citadel, and then since then, like you said, just an upward trajectory in his career. And then also to include a Vix, somebody who else that you guys are affiliated with. But I had anticipated having Vic on the event, but didn't have a specific match for him, so I was super happy to see that. Talk to me about any of the potential matchups that you're looking forward to between the two teams. Maybe any matchups that you're maybe trying to avoid, maybe ones that you're hoping happen. Just give me kind of a breakdown of some of the potential matchups that are going to be going down.
Yeah,
Saturday.
Absolutely. I think it's all going to be fireworks. So I think I'm really interested to see. I think one of the really interesting things about this team is if you look at the West crew, they're almost all no-gi specialists. Everybody almost exclusively competes in no-gi, a little bit of gi too. I don't want to take that take that away from them, but I would say they would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Whereas our team is a very hybrid team, a little bit more experience competing in like IBJJF style, point style events. So I think it's going to be a really interesting clash of styles. I think that there are going to be a lot of really interesting matchups. I think that Mock versus anybody is going to be fireworks. And especially the way that Mock it has a tendency to dive into danger, which makes everything so much fun. He is like always going for the kill. He's super aggressive. I think it'll be really interesting to see him versus maybe Phil. I think Phil is a really good athlete and does not stop moving. And I think those two could have a really fun match. I think I'd be interested to see Jack versus Mock. It's a really interesting style matchup. I think Jack is very well rounded. He looks very strong. He has good leg attacks, but is just kind of good everywhere and a good pressure passer. So I think that would be a really interesting matchup for Mock. Brian, it's like all of those matchups are really interesting. I think Brian versus Derek could be a really interesting match. Brian is also kind of a jack of all trades. Derek, I would say as of a couple years ago was more of a leg lock specialist, and I trained with him and have competed against him, and he is really on an upward trajectory too. He has really rounded out his game. He feels really good on top passing now. He feels really good on bottom, and he still has his really strong leg lock arsenal as well. So I think that'll be interesting to see who he goes against, and I think that'll be some good matchups. Darren, man, I don't know what anybody does to him. He is one of the when he gets going, he is one of the hardest people to do anything to, and he's going to want to be on top. There's probably no secret there, and I think it's going to be really hard to get him on bottom. I think, I'm glad he's on my team. I think that could be a really interesting matchup with Jack, because they're the two biggest people on either team. So I think that could be really interesting. And Vic, I think Vic versus Phil could be fun. Vic versus Jared could be really fun. Vic is good everywhere, doesn't stop moving, should be great. And then for me, I'm excited to go against just about anybody. I think it'd be really interesting. So Jared and I think, have been training the longest by quite a considerable margin. I think we probably were upper belts, at least brown belts, when just about everybody on the team started training. So I think that could be a really fun matchup for us. We've trained together years and years ago, but it's been a long time, and I think we both have evolved a lot. So I think that could be a really interesting matchup too.
Heck yeah, you had a lot to say about everybody on the other team. Is there any particular athlete on the other team that you think poses the biggest problem for your guys' lineup? Yeah,
honestly, Jack is kind of an unknown. So I have trained over the years with everybody else on the team, or competed against them, or something. And I think I don't, as not only for myself having a game plan versus somebody, but understanding kind of the game plan for the rest of the team to deal with him. I think that's going to be a matchup that I'm a little bit up in the air on. I don't know quite the best way to deal with him, because he's seemed like he's really strong everywhere.
Awesome, yeah. And is there anything specific strategy-wise, or anything that you thought of specifically when you were putting together your team that you think gives you an edge over the West All-Stars? Yeah, so I think the advantages that they have, I think everybody on that team is very good at legs. So that's something that coming into it, it's okay, I know that everybody's very good at legs, and everybody has very good no-gi submission defense. And I think for us,
there's a little bit of a different rule set for this. So there's a 12-point, correct me if I'm wrong, but a 12-point, if we get up by 12 points, starting at the beginning of the match, that is a way to win in addition to a submission. And I'm really happy with that because I feel like one of the things that I don't like about a sub-only rule set is that people can kind of just avoid getting submitted, and especially in this quintet style format, if we have somebody that is, some of our strongest members, if, you put somebody out there and their whole goal is to not get tapped, that can make things, little boring.
Yeah.
So I think for us, I would say that we have an advantage in terms of positional jiu-jitsu from that, gi and IBJJF background. So I'm hoping that or in my head, I think that that's a really important way to leverage the rule set to be able to create submissions or to be able to score enough points to be able to get the W.
Awesome, yeah. And I think that really covers most of the things I wanted to talk to you about with regards to the event. I am interested in hearing a little bit more about your background. I'm aware of you since the time that I started training, that one of my first experiences competing was the Sasquatch tournament and watching you win. I believe you were a purple belt at the time. I didn't know a damn thing about leg locks, but watching you leg lock everybody on the way to winning, I think it was like a $500 absolute bracket. That was my first exposure to you. Obviously, you have a huge history in the eastern part of the state, building the program at the Hawkeye Jiu-Jitsu Club, and then opening up your own gym here in Cedar Rapids. So talk to me a little bit about how you got into the sport and your early years in the sport that maybe a lot of people weren't around for because there just wasn't that much jiu-jitsu 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, I started jiu-jitsu in 2006, and I saw The Ultimate Fighter. I lived in kind of rural Iowa, and I was going to college, and I was like, okay, MMA is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want to start training jiu-jitsu. And I was actually supposed to go to Iowa State, and I decided to change everything, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Iowa because they had just started a jiu-jitsu club there. Somebody was going to dental school, and he had like gone on a Gracie cruise and gotten a blue belt, and then started a club at the university. And then I think I had just turned 18. It was the first day of my freshman year, and I started going to the club. And then I thought it was like probably the coolest thing I had ever done. And back then, I think in the state there were when I started training, there were 3 purple belts in the entire state. That I was aware of. There was Chris David in Des Moines, there was Greg Hauser up in Waterloo, Cedar Falls area, and then there was Travis Tarpon down in the Quad Cities. And so it was really rare for jiu-jitsu to be able to pop up. There was like nothing in Cedar Rapids, really nothing in any other part of the state. So I had that opportunity, and then one thing led to another. I started training more and more, and the university was pretty good about letting us, the mat space was open and it was pretty big. So pretty quickly I was training, 5-6 days a week, and then I kind of started coaching there, and then an opportunity arose at Militage Fighting Systems, which was, back then it was like one of the top MMA gyms in the country. There was a point in time where 4 out of the 5 UFC champions trained out of Militage. So we had some connections through that, and I ended up going down there quite a bit, and I started a gi program down there, and that was kind of my, when I was going through college, I would go down there and teach, and then, find different places to teach kind of across the state, and then kind of one thing led to another, and a lot of my students over the years were going to the university, and then they, did 4 years with me training, and they want to move home. So then they started their own thing, and then it kind of grew a really big network. So Dubuque Jiu-Jitsu kind of started like that. One of my students, one of my black belts, Eldon, moved back home, started that. Then in the Quad Cities, Nate would come up and train with us, and then I was like, Nate, come on, you don't need to drive an hour and a half to train, like start your own thing, you do great. And then a lot of my former students from Militage started training with him. And then, and then everybody, Olive Branch down in the southern part of the state reached out, and just everything kind of sprung from that. And then the university club, I had started something up here in Cedar Rapids, and then I was kind of splitting my time between teaching at the university and coming up to Cedar Rapids, and it was pretty difficult. I was still working full time, and I was just commuting and kind of going crazy. And then I had a teammate who trained out of Chicago, Matt Layton. We were really good friends, and I was like, man, he was a purple belt at the time, and I'm like, he's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners I've ever trained with. And I was like, Matt, like, dude, come out here, like, take over Iowa City, open a gym, like, this is perfect for you. And he took me up on it, and then so that's how Citadel formed, and then I kind of focused all my efforts up in Cedar Rapids.
That's very cool. So, I mean, throughout the story that you told right there, obviously a lot of the Eastern Iowa gyms can draw their lineage back to you. That puts you as one of the top instructors and one of the pioneers here in the eastern part of the state. But you're also obviously a really good competitor too. So, talk to me a little bit about some of the competitive accomplishments that you have, and maybe some of the ones that you're more proud of that you've accumulated over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting, it's, coming up, the reason we always did so much gi is that, like, that's where, in my head, that's where all the best competitors were. So when I first started training, like, the IBJJF only did the majors. So they only did Euros, Worlds, Pans, whatever. They didn't have, like, a Chicago Open or anything like that. So back then you would go to a Naga. Like, Nagas were the big thing. So we would drive to Chicago or Milwaukee, or one of the biggest ones was like the Arnold's Classic, this big body, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's thing in Columbus. That was like the big tournament. Like Crown Gracie competed there as a purple belt. Like, that was like the spot for like US Jiu-Jitsu. And so I did all of that, and then the IBJJF started like popping up regional tournaments, and then we kind of hit the ground running with that. And then I would, try to do as much as I could with that. So I've won, coming up the belts, I've won the Chicago Open a lot. That's kind of the big regional one. And then over the years, I've competed in a lot of other different places. The last couple of years, I feel like I've kind of had a breakout. For whatever reason, I could do really well in the Midwest and beat some really good people, but then I'd kind of drop the ball at major tournaments. And in the last couple of years, I'm really proud of some performances. I've medaled at Nogi Pans. I got silver and lost to Lovato in the finals. I took bronze at Nogi Worlds last year, and then double bronze this year in my weight in the absolute. I took silver at Gi Pans, so it's been really cool to start to put stuff together. I've had some good luck at American Nationals. I've won both Gi, Nogi, and the Nogi Absolute 2 times. So yeah, those are some of the things I'm really proud about. And it was cool to finally win the Sub-Spectrum Absolute. I had come up short to Kiernan a little bit earlier, and it was cool to get that back and sign up and compete with that.
That's awesome. Yeah, some of that stuff I didn't know about, so I'm glad you spoke on that. I think any jiu-jitsu competitor will say that, like, accolades are great, but there's so many other things that we get from this sport. Talk to me a little bit about, like, some of the, whether it be specific experiences or opportunities, etc., that you've been able to have through the sport, and just some of those that excite you the most, or that you're most proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the thing that everybody would say about doing this sport is, like, how you get to meet really cool people. I don't think, and especially as a college student, it was like immediately some of my best friends as a freshman at the University of Iowa, instead of going to Keggers, not that I didn't go to Keggers, but my best friend was a PhD math student. The person teaching at the club was a cardiothoracic surgeon fellow. So you that are 5, 10, 20 years older, and as like a freshman straight out of rural Iowa high school, it was like really cool to get to meet and network with like this really diverse group of people in a way that, like, had I just done the normal college thing or gotten a job somewhere, it's like you never bring that together. And that's something that I've always really appreciated about jiu-jitsu. At our gym, we have doctors, lawyers, CEOs, students. We have a member that's 75 that like trains 2-a-days. Like,
that's awesome.
we, it's like, it's so cool to see such a diverse group of people like come together and have this really cool outlet in a way that, like, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of difficult as an adult to like get out of just a baseline group or to be able to make new friends. And I think jiu-jitsu is such a cool way and a healthy way to be able to do that. And then over the years, it's, I think one of the reasons I like competing is being able to travel with the team, because you're like, you know, it's like you're having, it's like when you had sleepovers as a kid. It's like you're doing that with a group of people, and
Yeah.
you get to go there, and win or lose, you get to share war stories afterwards, have a few beers, and you know, you get to know people really well. So I really like that.
And to my knowledge, you've built pretty much your entire life around teaching and training jiu-jitsu. Is that 100% your job right now?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu ruined my life. I was like an economics major. I had you know, dreams of being a Wall Street trader, and then I found jiu-jitsu, and you know, here I am. But no, just kidding. Yeah, absolutely. As soon as there's this quote from Fight Club where as soon as you start fighting, the volume and everything, the rest of your life gets turned down.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like that with jiu-jitsu. As soon as I found it as a freshman in college, the volume in every other aspect of my life was turned down. This was the thing that I wanted to do, and I have kind of been chasing that dragon for quite a while. So I went full-time at the gym about 5 years ago, and I absolutely love it. I'm in here coaching and teaching, and I really wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
It's not a bad way to live, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you doing the interview with us today, letting us take up some of your time here after class. Real quick before we get out of here, I just want to have you kind of give a little information on the gym here at Tipping Point, the classes you offer, what somebody might like about Tipping Point if they're looking for a new gym in the Cedar Rapids area, and why they would want to choose Tipping Point as the place where they would be training.
Yeah, so I think one of the coolest things about Tipping Point is we try to have everything kind of balanced. Obviously, I care a lot about competition. I think that creates a lot of growth, but it's more that everybody's trying to make everybody else better. And sometimes when you go to, I've traveled all around the country and trained at a lot of big gyms, and something that happens at some of these mega gyms is jiu-jitsu kind of loses its magic because everybody is just trying to make themselves better. And I mean, at a certain point, like if this is your career, sure. But at Tipping Point, what we try to do is really balance that. We have, we offer really good, hard training, but it's also safe, and it's like kind of based on whatever your goals are. So, when our elite folks are rolling with, folks that this isn't their goal, this is kind of their hobby, it's like their goal is to make those people better. And it creates a really kind of a cool atmosphere where it's laid back, but still a place where you can really grow and pursue jiu-jitsu to a very, very high level. We offer classes for just about everybody. We have a really big 6 a.m. program. We have daytime classes. We have classes 7 days a week. And we have a really growing new kids program that we're super happy about. So yeah, absolutely. That's kind of everything that I've been working for the last 16 years of training jiu-jitsu, is here on these mats. And I think, if you're even remotely interested in training jiu-jitsu, I really encourage you to, check it out, try out a free class with us, and see if it ruins your life like it did mine.
There we go. Well, thanks again for taking us some time here. Appreciate you letting us come into the gym, set up, and ask you a few questions. Thank you for the training as well. And we'll see you next Saturday. Let's go get some food.